siempre. Solo que tengo que sufrir. Okay.
I guess we can start. Looking to the at the table at the back. Sí. Sí, sí. Ah, vale, puedo tocarlo. Hello, welcome to everyone. Welcome to the Commotion Conference. If you are just arrived, or also if you are online, it has been 2 days really great of hearing about marine science communication. That's Commotion. It's all about. It happens every 2 years, and I have the honor to introduce the colleagues of the IUCN that really took the leadership for this session on bringing science and media all together. So I will, with further ado, I will welcome Chantal, who will be the moderator of this session. So thank you very much and enjoy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Chantal Menard. I'm French, as you can hear from my accent. So I think everyone will understand me. We talked about the problems with English. I think I'll do my best, at least, to be understood. If you want to know more about me, I'm a communicator for the Mediterranean for almost 20 years now, but you can go and check my LinkedIn. And the session this afternoon is going to be focused on the Mediterranean. And we're going to start with a local tradition. We're in Spain, and Spain at that time goes for the siesta. So I will invite you to close your eyes. Please play the game. It's just for fun. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. And I will invite you to imagine that the project you have very close to your heart and that you've been working on so hard for so long is suddenly hitting all the headlines. It's everywhere in all the newspapers. You have all the local, national media calling you. You have The Guardian, the New York Times calling you. And everyone wants to talk about your project. Now open your eyes. Can't be true, right? So what we're going to do this afternoon is to modestly, but with our ambition, to try and get you to the path of successful media coverage from a few tips and examples that our panel is going to share with us. I'm going to introduce everyone in a minute. I just would like to tell you that we will mention materials and we will mention a number of links, and everything will be sent to you. At the end of the session, there will be a QR code appearing, and you can connect to that QR code and register to receive everything that will be given. As I said, we're going to focus on the Mediterranean. It's probably one of the places that is most at risk in terms of marine issues, climate issues, and it's often called the laboratory of the world. So I'm pretty sure that there will be lots of examples that can be an inspiration for wherever you come from. So I'm going to introduce each panelist. We're going to start with a person we have online. She's based in Egypt. She unfortunately couldn't make it. I don't know if you hear us, Rehab? Are you with us?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, Rehab, you're editor-in-chief of The Niles, which is an Egyptian, which is a platform, that is looking at all issues connected to the Nile. But you're an Egyptian journalist. You won 5 international media awards for the work you do in science, health, and the environment in the entire Middle East and North Africa region. In addition to journalism, you're also, to being a journalist, you're also a very skilled trainer, and you train scientists in many different aspects. You work with the British Council, and you have developed a 20-lesson MOOC on science journalism for Al Jazeera Online, which I really thank you because you will share it with us. I know it's in Arabic, but maybe some of your colleagues here in the room will be interested to look at this. And you've also co-authored a book called Water Conflicts and Cooperation. It's a media handbook that will also be shared with all of you. So Rehab, I know we talked a lot in the preparation of this event, and I told you I don't want to fall into the endless conversation of, I hope we're not losing her. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I said I don't want to fall into the usual conversation we have when we talk about science and media, which is media should be better at understanding science and scientists should be better at communicating. But still, you were quite insisting on that. And I think it would be good if you could tell us a few words about this miscommunication, maybe we can say, that is constantly happening or that you keep seeing happening between scientists and journalists.
Thank you, Chantal, for the introduction, and thank you for the small exercise at the beginning. Honestly, this is why I was so interested in the topic, the gap between media and researchers, because of what you mentioned at the beginning. Because if scientists, if the science is not communicated, then the value or the objective, the core idea behind the science is not reached to its audience. So this is why I would love to talk about the misunderstanding, the miscommunication between scientists and or researchers and journalists, and because this topic is coming over and over in each and every conference I go where scientists and journalists are presented. And in any training where I train researchers, they bring this topic heavily, that they feel that they are misquoted by journalists and they're afraid to talk to journalists. And this is something that because I'm a science journalist, I find it to be the biggest fear for me. From what I heard from researchers, and I would love to leave a space for the audience to ask questions and to give comments if they want. I feel like that researchers might do some steps that protects them and help them go to the interview with journalists with more comfort and feeling and trusting the process of media more. One of the things that I noticed, if researcher done some research himself or herself and read about the journalist that is going to do the interview, his or her background, and anticipate some of the questions that this journalist might ask, this will help a lot. The second thing that I find it to be useful, if the researcher tried to tailor the message to the audience, first of all, understand the audience that the journalist is going to send the message or to publish the story for, and then try to tailor the message, try to talk about stories more than data. Data is very important, but how to make this data more of a storytelling thing. This is one of the things. And try to while researching this, try to avoid jargons. And defining jargon is a bit hard for scientists, because sometimes something like hydropower is a jargon in itself, and for a scientist it's a very easy word. So defining the jargon and trying to make it easier for the normal audience is one thing. And yeah, I don't want to take a lot of time giving tips, and but preparing key points and trying to focus on 2 or 3 ideas make the message easier and more focused and more concrete and clearer to the journalists while talking. I think I will end here, and not to. I don't want to consume more than the 1 minute you told me I should talk through it, and I will leave the floor to you, back to you, Chantal.
It's just a short introduction, actually. I'll move now to the speakers we have here with us. So we have first together Laura and Javier from La Vanguardia. I guess everyone knows this media. So Laura, you're a data journalist. And actually, you two are here to tell us a story that we will hear about in a short while that won the first prize, which is an international award for journalism and sustainable tourism from the city of Chativa. And you have published an amazing story, I have to say, in La Vanguardia, which is called RIP, Rest in Peace Mare Nostrum, but we will hear about this in a minute. Laura, more specifically, you're a climate data journalist, and you work for not only La Vanguardia, but also another media in Asia, which is the Straits Times in Singapore. And you have expertise in combining data-driven storytelling and visual tools to communicate quite complex environmental issues, I have to say. You told me that you focus on bridging that gap between raw data and human impact. So just as a quick introduction, could you tell me a few words about this?
At least I tried. So I tried to turn this data into stories. So the journalists in the newsroom see me like a geek, like digging into data. But then what I do is I try to find like a cell in the massive data and try to convert this cell into a personal story that readers can engage to. So that's what I try.
Okay. And Javier is correspondent for Africa, for La Vanguardia. And is contributing to National Geographic also. You've had your work recognized by over a dozen awards. You also wrote 4 books, and you also won prizes for that. You actually inspire exhibitions, photo books, theater plays, and theater productions. And you are very often showcased in cities across Spain and the region. My question to you is, do you ever sleep?
Nothing. No. But it's amazing. I mean, I like a lot my work. I like writing books and working with Laura and sharing this, because it was for me the first time to share. I mean, I'm focused logically in Africa, but Mediterranean logically is also a combination of north of Africa but south of Europe, and she being the specialist of climate change and data was very nice to see how climate change impact in the north and the south. Maybe sometimes the same problem affects very differently. So not a lot of much of a sleep, but fine.
Okay, then next we have Denis, I'll say the French way, Denis Loctier, or Denis Loctier. Denis is probably the person everybody will want to talk to because he works for Euronews. And Denis, you have been producing and presenting since 2019 the monthly documentary called Ocean. I don't know if it rings a bell to some of you. It's broadcast on 160 countries in 8 languages, and you actually report on science and technology for Euronews with this specific focus on the ocean. You've covered over 200 research-based projects, so I think that's quite impressive. And you're also a passionate scuba diver. My question to you is, you explained me that the production you have is actually a sponsored media approach. Could you tell us a few words about this and how it works?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Chantal. I'm a TV journalist, so they gave me a handheld microphone to make me more comfortable. Thank you, and for the incredible technical organization here. It's true, I work on Euronews, and I'm the most hated journalist among my colleagues because they had to They have to cover war zones, political conflicts, corruption, all unpleasant stuff, because the news is generally about unpleasant stuff. I get to dive with marine biologists, spend time on research vessels, go to the Arctic research stations or South Pacific to see how they're transshipping tuna in the Marshall Islands. So yeah, I'm very lucky to do that, and this has been continuing every month. Every month we have a new 8-minute-long episode of Ocean on Euronews. The latest one just came out yesterday. And we can do that on a news channel, and you might know or not, news channels don't generally have budgets to cover such topics at this degree of well, production values. The reason Euronews can do that is thanks to the support of the European Commission, which is sponsoring this series since it has been launched in 2019. It's a win-win both for DG Mare at the European Commission, who is our partner, and for Euronews, because we at Euronews, well, I look at it from a journalistic perspective, we get to cover topics that we find pertinent, important to our international viewers around Europe and around the world. And are also interesting, because ocean is interesting, as I hope you all agree. And for the sponsors, it's a way to disseminate the results and the activities of various research projects, and not just research projects, even though most of the episodes cover some research projects. And the question Chantal asked, how does it work for a journalist producing sponsored content? And the answer is, it should work just the same as producing non-sponsored content. So the key to this being a success is when a sponsor understands that the journalist is not there just to hold a microphone and be a more or less pretty face on the screen. Journalists need to do their work without interference from the sponsor. All the major media will have that stipulation in the contracts and the sponsorship agreements with whoever wants to fund their production. The editorial control always remains on the side of the editorial team, my side. So this is how it works. We don't work for the sponsor as journalists. We work for our audience, our viewers, and we have a duty to inform, to educate, and this is what motivates us. I hope that answers the question.
I understand why everybody hates you. I mean, you have the money, you choose what you want to do, so talk to him, really.
All right, already winning friends. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then next we have Manfred Oepen. Manfred, you're from the IUCN Commission on Education and Communication. So you might want to tell us a few more words about this. But before this, and above all, you're a consultant. You have more than 40 years of experience in international cooperation. You have an expertise which is actually more on the Asian side, and the Caucasus and Central Asia. And what is interesting with you, I think, is that you focus on communication for social change. And I think this is really a key topic today, more than ever, maybe, in a time when we are losing more and more humanity. We have to absolutely get back to that. And you actually work with a very human-centered approach. And you have collaborated, you will tell us that story, on a project that is called My Green Mongolia, which I think is a very interesting story. But for now, I wanted to ask you about communication and science, and the fact that they have in common something which is research somehow. Do you want to tell us a few words about this?
Yes, I can do that. The question here is, what kind of research are we talking about? Is it academic research, or is it the type of research which came up 45 years ago in the early 1970s, when it was called participatory action research, where the researched would become the researchers? So the people who were supposed to change to add to their knowledge, change their attitudes, and also change their practices, they were becoming the ones who would also do the research, meaning they would not be the object of research any longer, but they, as the ones concerned, would do the research by themselves as a cooperation effort with people from outside, which could also be academics. And at the same time, of course, the same people would be the beneficiaries of the research results. So that was a completely new approach to research, which has ever since then much more entered the realm of international development assistance, which I work in. And even though I also teach development communication at Hamburg, Berlin, and Leipzig University, I must admit that when I'm at work, I would more use this kind of participatory action research where the people themselves, the communities concerned, would be in charge, instead of academic research where you fly in and take out data back to your university or your academic station and then work on it without leaving too much concern, too much feedback to the ones who you have researched and who should benefit from the research. Maybe that's an initial notion of mine to the whole conference setup.
Thank you. We also have someone in the room that is not on stage, but he's going to be crucial for this session. Let me introduce you to Yorgos. We were wondering how I would introduce Yorgos, and he said, I'm a graphic engineer. So Yorgos is basically going to take the key messages of this session, and we're going to build a sort of list of tips that we will then share with all of you. So again, it will appear at the end with the QR code. So Manfred, back to you. You're actually preparing a guide that I think it would be interesting to talk about to open this session. It's a guide to basically use strategic communication for environmental project, processes, campaign. There are many guides, I mean, very honestly. So why this one? Why another one? What is the motivation behind this guide?
It is also a guide on communication strategy design, which has not been developed in the academic research part of the world or of a community of practice, but more from the field, as part of what IUCN-CEC, the Commission on Education and Communication, does, which of course is related to environmental education and communication, not so much on the media or on the technology side or on the formal education side, but much more on the oriented towards community, towards the interface between different social groups in society. And that is a little bit about the background of the strategic communication guide developed by IUCN-CEC. As you can see in the illustration, the subject matter and the core of a guide is a 10-step strategy which goes along the 4 major phases or stages of any kind of project or process. So these phases and also the 10 steps, as a matter of fact, are pretty generic. The stages being assessment, planning, production, and action and reflection. And let me just quickly go through the individual steps so that you get an idea of what this very systematic and strategic approach to communication communication strategies for a project or for a process, for an initiative, are all about. So in the first step, you would, of course, first analyze the situation and the problems at hand. In this case, as the guide is developed for the IUCN community of practice, these would, of course, be conservation problems. The second step then goes into identifying and analyzing the actors a little bit more closely, very often done by means of what is called a knowledge attitude practice survey. So this is where research comes in, which then leads in step 3 into defining and developing communication objectives and educational objectives. In step 4, you then look into what kind of resources do I have available. Time, budget, staff are the communication objectives which I defined in step 3 realistic and feasible in that respect. And usually the answer is no, and that is why in step 5 you look for other partners who can either contribute budget or staff or also other resources to your project or process at hand. And only in step 6, surprising to many people who would think of a communication strategy to start with the media, only in step 6 the media come in, the media selection and mix come in, asking yourselves, and also based on the budget and time and staff available, what media can I afford to have? Is TV too expensive? Can I work with radio or social media instead, for example? What kind of media are best suited to reach the audiences I have identified in step 2, and other related questions. And then in step 7, you would then only then go into message design, trying to identify and formulate messages in line, of course, with your communication objectives, and of course adapted and oriented towards the audiences and their situations and problems that you have identified in step 1 and 2. After that, in step 8, you would produce the media. Also, in many cases, if you have enough budget, you would pre-test them. And then in step 9, you would also use them in the field, which is not, as many of you would think, self-evident and as such has to be taken for granted. In very many cases, and I think many of you know this, media are produced and then put on a shelf and then rest there and collect dust for the rest of their life, and never ever anyone uses them. So here in this 10-step communication strategies, if you, for example, develop a video or a theater play, this kind of media would also be used in the field for the audiences identified in step 2. And finally, of course, in step 10, and not only there ex post, but also throughout the whole process, you would do a lot of monitoring and evaluation in order to find out whether you are on the track or whether you need to readjust. This is still a rather academic, even though generic way of visualizing the heart of a matter of a communication strategy developed by IUCN CEC. There is also a second slide which I could show you, which would also put the whole approach in a more descriptive way. So this is guided by what I always coin the human-centered approach, that you first of all have to know your audience. And that, of course, as we all seem to agree, storytelling, the stories work, which should be focused on the people concerned and also the people supposed to benefit from any campaign, from any media project, from any journalistic work. A very important aspect is what was coined by IUCN CEC 15, 20 years ago, love, not loss, not to focus too much on the negative aspects of a given situations and problems, which are bad enough, but to also focus and even focus more on love, namely on the positive aspects, on the specific positive examples where problems have been solved, where people have taken action, and things like this. Another advice, or another of the 7 tips highlighted here, is to work with trusted voices, to work with what is sometimes in science called change agents, or in modern days influencers, even though you have to be very careful with them because sometimes you can put your bets on the wrong horse. But that is definitely working with change agents who have a very good and trusted access to the people whose knowledge you want to increase, whose attitudes and practices you want to change. That is definitely a good idea. To focus on conversation and not on the content, on the dialogue, and not so much on the media as such and the media content as such. That is another good advice. And if content is king, then the distribution is queen, as it says here, which again refers to the fact that you cannot rest with producing media, but you also have to use the media to good effect in the field. You have to accomplish the last mile. You really have to reach out to the audiences you have in mind. And last but not least, as it says here, to create a surround sound experience, meaning that you should use different media for different purposes and for different audiences in order to make your communication strategy as efficient as possible. So this, in a nutshell, summarizing approximately 90 pages of what the communication strategy guide has is what the guide is all about. And there will be a link for you to access it. Yeah. It is still in a draft and in a review process within the IUCN network. And hopefully the final version will be approved by the IUCN World Congress next year in October. So until then, it will remain a draft, but it is already public.
Thank you. IUCN CEC stands for Commission on Education and Communication, for those who didn't know. So we're going to look at stories that work. And I also then would like to look at what's coming, because the landscape is changing very fast for communicators, for the media, for the way the information is being shared and distributed. But we're going to listen first to stories that have worked in what you've done, and we're going to analyze them. I don't know if you're back with us or you're still with us. Rehab?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask first two questions as a general introduction to this part on your stories. So before we get into your specific examples, could you tell us what the topics you believe work today when we look at Mediterranean issues, marine issues in the Mediterranean, including also, I would like to take the fact that you're coming from the EU or connected to the EU through Euronews, Denny, to also look at, for example, the restoration law, which is not always an easy topic. So again, the question is, what are the topics you think are attractive today?
Thank you, Chantal, and thank you, Manfred, for mentioning the guide. I enjoyed a lot listening to what you said and compare it to what I do, and if I'm applying the practices that you mentioned or not in my work. So thank you. Those guides are very helpful, especially if it comes from a practical point of view, not theoretical. So, coming to your point and what is work, I live in Middle East and in the part of the world that Javier and Laura mentioned, the North African part or the Southern Mediterranean part, where it's described as the driest region in the world. So water issues, for me, I find it to be the most interesting part. And whenever, if climate change is the hottest topic in the world, and we just finished COP29 and Egypt hosted COP27, translating climate change into water in this region makes everything attractive, make climate change attractive, makes water attractive, and connecting those two stories and especially water to other topics, other hot topics like economy, politics, people's everyday life makes water more and more attractive. But
Thank you.
I feel that because of the issues that we have that is related to water, water becomes more and more interesting and attractive to people or to normal audience at the moment. Should I continue talking about my story, or should we move to them?
No, we're just going to explore first the topics with everyone, if you don't mind, and I'll get back to you in a minute. Anyone wants to comment on what you think are the stories that really work lately?
Oh, let me say what I have found over the last 6 years that I've been producing Ocean, and before that I did another research program on Euronews. So, which subjects, which topics, which fields of knowledge can work on TV? What do you think? And my answer is all of them. All of them can work on TV, and if you are working with professional journalists who know their stuff, they can communicate the right message in a way that people will watch. That's not your necessarily primal concern or field of expertise. This is journalists who need to understand what you do and find an engaging, visually rich, if we're talking about television in particular, and simple and clear to understand format to communicate what you do. So you need to be equal partners with journalists, and even complicated visually subjects like software development can be turned into a fascinating documentary if you're not showing people sitting in front of computer typing in code. That gets very boring very fast. But you can show how data is gathered for digital models developed for a digital twin of the ocean. You can show what difference this software makes for lives of real people that will somehow change for the better, hopefully, thanks to this software product. So all topics, all subjects can work.
Is there one or two that connected to marriage?
Those that work best, well, today we heard plenty of great presentations, and many have mentioned emotions, human stories, relevance to the viewer. Stories that concern the vital interests of your target audience will work the best, will get the most attention and probably the best feedback. Like stories concerning health, there's nothing more important to most of us than our health. We did a story here in Spain, well, on the Mediterranean, Cap de Creus, it's close to the French.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
All right, sorry. No concrete examples. Just keep in mind that if this is something you care about in your daily lives, then probably your audience will care about that. And if you can frame your research in that perspective, yeah, that obviously will work best.
Thank you. Javier and Laura?
Well, I totally agree with him. I think that all the topics can be interesting and we can address it as media. But the thing is, I don't think like it's about topics, but it's the angle or how we address them. So of course, turning data or turning these insights into human stories can help, as well using data visualization and storytelling tools can help to make these stories more engaging and these topics more appealable for the audiences or for a broader audience. But I also think that, and we have discussed this like 100 of times in the newsroom, that at least for climate change, which is a topic that I usually cover, most of the times headlines are very hopeless. So you feel like the reader can feel there's nothing to do because we've lost everything. So what we are trying to do with headlines is like to be more positive, aligned as well with what Manfred was saying, that like it's not like cheating to the audience. Like we are talking about big problems that have like hard solutions or solutions that are not even found, but we're trying to communicate it in a way that maybe through solutions or maybe through explaining the story of people who is maybe not finding the solution, but at least they've tried to start handle with this issue. So so for us, it's like trying to find a way to communicate those topics, not in a pessimistic way, but from a point of view that can give like some hope, or that the reader can find that with their action, there's like something to do. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe I will add that try to talk about feelings that the reader can feel. I'm going out of the topic of the Mediterranean, but I think the example it's okay to explain that. For example, I was not some time ago in Gambia, being a professor for some students that they want to be photojournalists, and before that I was doing like for 2 years following all the migrant routes to Europe. For 2 years I wrote for this topic in all angles. I thought that all the angles were covered. And then I told the girls, because all of them they're photojournalist girls, come back tomorrow with a report about this. And the next day I did some groups, and one of the group told me, okay, we decided we are gonna to cover this from the side of the mothers, that they go to the market and they are criticized by the others because they let their kids go. And that was a shock for me, because I had no idea about this. I didn't cover that on that angle. But the other group was even better, because they say, okay, we are going to cover this from the WhatsApps of our boyfriends.
Wow.
Because our boyfriends are the ones who are going to Europe. And we don't know if they are not answering our messages, if they are dead, or they forget us. If they arrive to Europe, we are afraid of maybe they find a white girl and they get in love. Should I wait for him or not? And all this, it talks about things that we can understand. Because all of us, we have been in love. All of us miss people that we love. All of us, we are insecure sometimes if we don't have a message that is replied by someone we love. And I felt that works in Mediterranean issues or climate change. Because when I was talking with a grandfather who knows that maybe never will see his boy again because he left, he was not talking about success. Because when I was talking to a Gambian grandfather, and he said, no, I mean, I'm happy if he reach Europe, but I won't see him again. I'm very old, in 5 years I will be dead, and he left. It's all. We can understand this, because we have grandfathers, we know what it means. Miss the grandfather, maybe don't see him again. So when you find the way to take this into your topic, it gets the interest of the people. Because if we are talking about climate change, maybe it's something that it's okay, I mean, I'm working today, I don't know what's climate change. But if you find that there is a way to connect your feelings with the topic of the story, I think that's a way to get the attention. And it works in Africa. That, I mean, I know what it means not to have the interest of the readers. And I think in the climate change can also work.
Surely works with science also, like any topic that people work on and that is connecting to our daily lives, for sure, can be told in a way that is touching our emotions, definitely.
Sure.
Manfred, do you want to add something to this?
I can only confirm and add to what my colleagues have said. What works in the Mediterranean and in parts of Africa has also worked in the countries or regions where I have worked, in Indonesia, in Laos, in Mongolia, in the Caucasus. The topics that are close to your heart, that have a human touch, a human dimension, these are always the topics that work best. And in a way, according to my observations, very often both corporations, but also political decision makers and sometimes even the media, they work based on a business model that says, here I have a solution, do you have a problem? And turning that around by means of, for example, the step 2 of such a communication strategy and step 1, first analyzing and studying very carefully together with the people who are supposed to increase their knowledge, to change their attitudes, to change their practices. What is the situation? What are the problems? And then also identify exactly who are contributing to the problems and who are problem solvers, the change agents. That is one important step to turn that around and to arrive at what sometimes in my world and increasingly is not only called storytelling, which is a concept 25, 30 years ago, but nowadays impact stories, change stories, where you really focus on what is going on and what has worked and what has not worked, and who within a social group or in society are the positive, constructive factors that could contribute to solving a problem.
Yeah. Now, I guess that as a communicator or as journalist, you don't always have a choice. Maybe sometimes you're being told that you have to report on something that, well, that's going to be tough. So how do you do in that case? I mean, do you have, like, even us as communicators, we don't always have easy topics to communicate, especially when they're connected to science. So do you have, like, tips or approaches that you use that help you manage to turn the story in a way that is going to be more attractive? If you can, briefly, each of you give me an answer on this. And Rehab, I know you're with us, so tell us.
My advice would be that the more complex the topic, like for example climate change or biodiversity loss, the less you should talk about it. But you should try to find a way how it affects people. And it was mentioned here already by also some of my colleagues. For example, instead of talking about climate change too much, focus on the water problem or the disaster risk management problem, which affects people, and that is how you get them. Only a very few people understand what climate change is really all about, and even they are struggling with each other. The same also more or less about biodiversity loss. But if you focus on what is happening at your doorstep and what is affecting you and your family's life, especially if it regards health issues or issues related to the future of your children, things that have happened recently, like for example a drought or a flood, that is what gets people's attention, and that is where you can pick them up and incorporate them into your stories.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I will say that you as a scientist, you have to be conscious that you have a power that is and a strength that we don't have as a journalist. You know a lot. The knowledge of the world in your area is huge. If you want to do something about climate change in the Mediterranean, I'm sure all of you know 10 or 20 organizations that work very well on this topic. But not only organizations, also people who is interesting. For example, we will talk later about the project that we did, but for example, one of them was Laura and me, we had to talk about the rising of temperatures in the sea. So it's a very boring topic. Rising temperatures is like, well, it's not boring, but
not for you.
Not for you. Not for you.
We are not in the correct audience.
It's not the right place to say that. It's very interesting, but it's difficult to get the attention of the people about this. So we had to we found actually an old guy, 77 I think, that since he was 20 is every week taking a boat, going to the Med Islands to take the temperature of the sea. And this, the fact that one old guy that is doing that for 50 years, it's something that it was interesting. Some people like this, I'm sure you know, maybe not this old guy, but you in your area, you know someone who is working very hard, or some old guy who is living in an area who is very affected, or also a network that we don't know. I mean, you here, I don't know how many nationalities you are, but many. Sometimes if I go to a Spanish one, because I heard that they work in this, maybe they know, you should talk with this and this and this other people, who is very interesting. This network, the value of this network is huge. And you have to be conscious when you want to approach to a journalist, that you can show what you want to tell, but also that you have a power that you can share with them. You know a lot of people, you know some examples that maybe they can work for the journalist, and sometimes I have the impression that you don't know very well that you have this power, this knowledge that we don't have no idea. I mean, sometimes we were like, no idea who we should talk or knock the door.
Yeah, following this, and especially in data, like as a data journalist, what happens a lot is that there's a lot of data sources and a lot of, and a lot of people, like a lot of conversation and papers and data sets around a topic. For example, I was doing a story about microplastics in the ocean for the Straits Times, which was like a visual story, and I was like doing 2 months, like gathering data and facts and talking to experts to then build this storytelling piece with a lot of 3D images, which was pretty cool. Like, I had a colleague about doing 3D that was amazing on her work. So the thing is, like, for doing all this like investigative part, it's super helpful, your help, because like we are not in the scientific part. So for us, it's like just a lot of noise around these papers, these data sets, these everything. So it's super helpful to have like people like as a reference in each topic that you usually work with, and ask them like, hey, could you please give me like which data set do you recommend? Not just data set, like which variable is better to explain this problem? How can I explain? Like, as a data journalist, you usually mess with data and you cross things. So sometimes it's like, no, you can't cross these 2 variables. And it's, well, but I'm trying to do this approach, so which is the best? So it's super helpful if you find like to find some scientists that are very collaborative, in not only to recommend the best sources, but also to be open to have like a conversation on how to address this from a non-scientific point of view, which is going to be always like messy for you, but it's very like that. The schedules that we work in the newsrooms are very tight, so usually you work with a lot of time to carry on your investigations, and we have like very, very short time to do it. So we are never trying to do that from your point of view, which is going to be better, but we are trying to do it from a way that we can connect the readers. So sometimes like finding these correct, like these people that is open to come to talk and discuss these not scientific approaches with data, are like, these persons are the best ones.
Okay.
And they're very helpful.
We're going to jump into the stories, because otherwise we're going to run out of time, and I think this is where we're going to see what you mean. So let's start with you, Rehab. I don't know if you are... Yes, you're back.
Yes.
So your story, if you want to tell us what it was about and what you identified as what you think made it a successful story.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you again. And honestly, I think it's a good timing after what Laura has said, because what she described, almost what I experienced in my story, the too much data. So basically, let me tell you something. I will be very concrete in this. In this story,
Sorry, Rehab. Maybe I have to explain that the story is about Alexandria going sunken. It's quite. I don't know if we can see it because I was trying to show it on the screen. Yes.
So in this story, I tried to analyze and investigate the scenarios of Alexandria as a city that is threatened to be sunk. And it was part of a big project that included 5 cities around the world, 2 in Africa, and I can't remember, I think in Indonesia and Ireland and Germany, Holland. So anyway, so while I was writing the story, I made 2, I wouldn't say mistakes, but 2 things. I had 2 questions in my mind. I collected a huge number of data. When should I stop interviewing people and collecting data? And the second question for me, where to begin? What should be the introduction? Because this is, as we all know, the biggest challenge. And personally, I think 2/3 of my effort while writing the story goes to the introduction. So the first question, when to stop? I find myself, like, through the process, I felt like I will stop when I find myself skeptic enough. Like, I develop this critical thinking because I collected too much data that I now become able to identify the propaganda from the factual data. So this is when I thought that now the story is almost complete. And
why do you think that it was successful? Because it got a nice coverage. Yes, in this way we can say it. What do you see were the key elements that made the story attractive and relevant to people?
Today, the truth, Chantal, and I think every journalist will see this, that it is very hard to weigh our success as a journalist. It's not like doctors who do surgeries and receive the feedback immediately. For us journalists, this is always, it's a little bit, I think it's the negative side of my work is not to see the reflection or the success of my story physically, not to be able to measure it. But this story, I feel it's success because I published it, I think, more than a year ago, and still receiving feedbacks on the story from. Let me tell you that next week I will go to give a lecture in Alexandria because I got invited by Buta Institute to talk about my work to a group of artists, and they never knew about me. But yeah, they knew about me thanks to the work I done in this feature. And 2 weeks ago, the same thing happened, and it happened through the year. So from time to time, I receive a call telling me we saw your feature about Alexandria and we like it a lot, and we would like to invite you to do a training or to give a lecture or to talk about it to a group of researchers or art students. So this might be a reflection to how successful this story is. For me personally, I send my story to my colleagues, fellow journalists from different countries, and see their comments and see if, and this would be part of my feeling of success. Yes, this is, I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thanks. Shall we move to the next one? So that's yours, Javier and Laura.
Well, the project was to show how climate change affects in the north of the Mediterranean and the south of the Mediterranean. So, and as I said before, how sometimes the same topic affects differently in both sides. For that, we went to, we work in La Costa Brava. We also went to Tunis, Egypt, Lebanon, Greece, and Balears. Well, we took a ship to a scientific ship. So we tried also to, for us was very important to balance also, not to show good things are happening in the north and bad things are happening in the south, something like that. Also to show that the people is doing things. As we said before, for example, the first story, it was about the lionfish, how these new species are like invading the sea. But we did it going in Lebanon and showing what the Lebanese people is doing. It was a group of guys who were like fishing them and trying to promote in the restaurants around to cook the lionfish, to make something, I mean, to make profit of this problem, and to put that on the menu could change the situation. So it was people doing things to make a change. So it's different topics, different countries, but also trying to show that things are happening, that people, local people are doing. This guy is the guy that I told you, is the old guy who was.
I think what is interesting, we don't see it here because we didn't want to be spending too much time watching videos and so on, but you will see in the link, it's an extremely complete story with data, with scientific information, with stories of people where you go to many different places. I mean, I can only understand why you got a prize for this. You were actually also nominated for the European Media Prize, the European Parliament. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting because even this infographics, you know, about the plastic is really like so striking. And everything you've put in this report is in its way addressing the issue for the Mediterranean Sea from so many different perspectives, but we can completely get the picture. So what do you see was the successful element to make this story work? Is it more like the people, the way you've been able to deal with the science?
I think it was combining both, combining videos, personal stories, data visualizations, scientific insights. But like from like a newsroom, like from our newsroom, also there was like a support to make this story because you can't spend like a lot of time like doing stories, so you usually have like a short period of time to go. So for this, like our newspaper supported us and make this like the series of report of the summer. So like we had like every Sunday one of these reports coming out, and we had like a lot of the infographic team helping us a lot with like putting all this together in a special website. And so for us it was like our media as well supporting us, which is not as common or as usual, that they only can support these kind of projects once a year or twice a year. So yeah,
I think it's connecting to what we were hearing also this morning, you know, I think it's Thiago, you were mentioning this, you know, the fact that it's important to invest on having different jobs, different skills, because that's when you get a story that really breaks through. Denis, you have a story also?
I have plenty, and yes, this is just one of 17 or something which we have made so far. And it illustrates in many ways what all of us have been talking about, the importance of personal touch, importance of getting relevant topics that your viewers care about. This is one of the episodes of Ocean, covering 2 European-funded research projects. And the question we were asking is, the sea, does it make us healthier or does it make us sick? And the answer, of course, is both. It can be both helpful and dangerous. And we go to Spain and to the UK to show 2 examples.
There are actually surfers. I'm saying this because we had something about surf this morning.
We had something about surfers with wonderful presentation / social experiment of Laura. And something probably wasn't mentioned when analyzing this impactful comparison is in Laura's second presentation, which I personally liked more, were human stories. We mentioned 2 female athletes who competed, so there was some kind of challenge. They want to know who won. That's one of the factors that brought that project closer to us and made it memorable. So back to my story here. In Spain, it's the place called Roses. Well, the Spanish, of course, now it's close to the French border. There is a beautiful protected area which faces some threats, some dangers from, in particular, development of offshore energy. But we were interested in a project around there that analyzed how do marine activities, like just walking along the beach, swimming at sea, experiencing the sea, how does it affect the outcomes of oncological patients there living in that area? So it's been a long-running experiment which concluded that there is positive health effect when women who were undergoing cancer therapy were regularly interacting with this beautiful protected area. As a result, this region has made possible what they call a blue prescription. So doctors following these patients can prescribe this kind of sea interactive experiences, which will be subsidized by the state or by the region. So more patients will have these positive outcomes by, like this, interacting with the sea. And in my story, I have interviewed a few women participating in this project. Of course, we also talked to scientists, because it's important, besides personal stories, also not to forget the scientific credibility of what we talk about. We don't want to entirely shift into the risky domain of emotions and hype, which might be extremely popular on social media, but also might lead us into the dark waters of misinformation, disinformation, and false hopes. So this project was presented through human stories of women participating in it, who shared their personal backgrounds and how that affected their health positively, and interviews with scientists who gave more scientific point of view on how it works, what we should keep in mind, and how can we encourage this blue prescription project. So that's half of the episode. The other half of this 8-minute long episode was a contrasting example. Again, contrast works a lot because, yeah, we have watched the story till the middle. We are convinced that the sea is good for our health. But then we find out that it's not always the case. It does help your health and your mental health if you have a nicely protected area next to the place you live at. But what if you have a source of pollution? We heard about PFAS today, this forever chemicals that can accumulate in our bodies and gradually destroy our health, from us just enjoying the coasts, the beaches. And we went to the UK, to the south coast in Cornwall, which is, getting back to the surfers' story, which is also a surfing spot. So surfers enjoy that area, which you can see now. It has sometimes higher waves than that, sometimes lower. It's beautiful, really. And it's full of sewage. This part of England has this chronic problem of sewage system linked together with canalization that is evacuating rainwater. So if it rains a lot, sewage overflows, and all that sewage from great British people ends up where these surfers surf. So we talked to the surfers, who explained to us very openly that when we surf, quite often we have to pass under the waves, and unavoidably we swallow some of that water. And they have a system to warn them if there recently has been recorded some kind of sewage release. I suppose you can feel a certain level of disgust, which is an emotion which brings you closer to the story, which grasps your attention. These surfers are swallowing sewage water when they are trying to enjoy the sea. There is a statistics of rising levels of quite dangerous diseases, and even worse than that, this sewage water feeds evolution of antibiotic-resistant bacteria in the coastal areas of Britain. So that research project also told through personal stories of surfers, also taking time to carefully consider the emotional part of it, like compassion in the Spanish part of the story, and outrage and disgust in the British part of the story. We want to protect this beautiful sea. That's what makes the story work.
I have to cut you. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I forget that I don't have 8 minutes.
Well, you see, then I'm saving you.
All right. There are plenty of other... Yeah.
But this is really a story worth watching. It's 8 minutes. The link will be sent to you. And let's...
Please do watch it, yes. I hope you enjoy it.
And there are also more stories that Denis worked on that we will share with you, because the way they are built are very helpful for us communicators. Manfred, very quickly, if you can tell us the story, and then I really would like to hear all of you on what you see next for the work of journalists. So Manfred, like if in 2 minutes you can tell us that great story you worked on.
I'm not sure about the 2 minutes, but I can definitely tell the story, which is a very different one, because it's not dealing with water, yes, but with oceans, no, because it's a story from Mongolia. It was part of a GIZ and IUCN CEC cooperation project, which at the heart of the matter was all about protected areas, overgrazing, pasture degradation, biodiversity loss, these kind of topics which GIZ together with IUCN CEC tried to solve. And we came up with a soap opera, a radio drama series of 26 episodes called Love and Greed in the Valley of the Kashmir Goats. Because the Kashmir goats, that has to be explained, are one of the root causes of a pasture degradation and nature deterioration in Mongolia, because the goats, not only the Kashmir goats, but these in particular in Mongolia, they would not only eat the grass, but also the roots of the grass, and thus in the south of Mongolia would contribute to desertification, and in the north of Mongolia, which is more mountainous and more forested, they would contribute to deforestation and also to the end of permafrost. So we came up with this idea to develop not the scientific facts about climate change and all these more or less agricultural and nature resource management related data, but to come up with a radio drama with, for example, a love triangle between two men and a woman. There was also a father-son conflict, a generational conflict of a herder family, which was also at the same time the target audience for this kind of radio drama. We had, of course, also criminals in it and corruption, and the bad guys were always punished in the course of a storyline. 26 episodes would have covered half a year. Each week for about 15 to 20 minutes had an episode which was then repeated at least once a week.
Was it on the radio?
It was both on several nationwide radio stations, but we also put it through the social media, which are very prominent and also very widespread in Mongolia. Facebook, YouTube, so that we had both the conventional radio stations with weekly programs, but we also had a fixed Facebook page where interested parties could download the episodes week after week. We knew, as you were asking about how did we know about success, we of course, being GIZ, we had our regular monitoring and evaluation programs. We had radio listening groups reporting back to us what they had been learning from the radio series. But we knew exactly that we were on the right track when Garit, the ranger of one of the protected areas, a good guy, was imprisoned because of his love triangle conflict with his opponent, who was the son of a very rich herder, who had a fight with him and had put him to jail. And then the people the listeners would start calling in the radio stations. When is Garrett being released from prison? And at that point, we knew we had them. Yeah?
Right.
So that was definitely, in addition to many other more factual monitoring and research data we collected, that was definitely a point when we had them. At a later stage, we turned the plots and the stories behind the 26 episodes, which had been co-created by first-class media people, art people, and environmental NGOs and government people in a co-creation process. We turned that also into theater plays. First, performed for the supposed beneficiaries and target audiences, especially herder families in remote areas. But at a later stage, these same theater plays were also put on stage by, for example, eco-clubs and students from green schools for their own kids at school, for their parents in cooperation with teachers. And that was growing a network where these, especially the major figures and actors from that kind of radio drama became extremely popular in all of Mongolia as part of this My Green Mongolia campaign.
Thank you. Really, really great examples. And as you can see, journalists need you, which is great. And I like the creativity and the co-production ideas that are behind all the stories you've presented. I'd like to finish the session with an open conversation on what's next. I mean, we've talked a lot about storytelling, we've talked a lot about things that we know work, the way we can use numbers, the way we can use data projection. But as we said, things are moving very fast, including in your world. We hear more and more cases of AI, for example, in certain media, becoming the journalist. This is maybe on the darker side, but do you see anyway, in general, things evolve, change, what would you see as what's going to be the next thing to do so that we know how to talk to you, actually, and what kind of things you need from us to do a better job? I know it's a lot of questions. You can pick one, the one you feel more comfortable with, but how do you see things evolve? I think is probably where we can start from. Who wants to go?
I would say that we have to be ready for the fight. In scientific side, our journalists were in a world that is like, I mean, look, Twitter, Elon Musk is against you, is against scientific side of the story. If you talk about climate change, you have a lot of violence from people. That has changed a lot in the last years. 5 years ago, I wrote a report about climate change in Africa. Always okay, fine, good. Now I say something about climate change, and I have 10 comments saying that you are working for Soros or you are telling lies. And I think we have to fight this fight. I mean, this war, because the fake news or the right-wing side is going to try to say that you are lying, and we are lying. So we have to insist, we have to explain
Fight back.
Yeah, fight back. And I think that's a fight that we have to do. If we avoid to do that, they are going to win.
So it means you need to increase your social media presence, spend more time to go after the comments? How do you plan to do this?
I think it's to explain, again, things that you have already explained, and insist, and again, and try to embrace everyone, even the ones that they don't want to listen, or they don't want, or they are already convincing on the other side. These ones, the message has to reach also these ones. Mm-hmm. Because my feeling is that at one point we'll say, okay, let's forget about them because they don't listen. But these people is like getting big, and they are bigger than now.
Absolutely. If we shy away, then we're not going to win for sure.
And if you don't like online misinformation now, wait until the generative AI will start generating videos that are impossible to distinguish from real ones.
Have you seen this already?
I know personally at least 3 colleagues who have been turned into deepfakes by Russian propaganda. In Russia, there is a project called Doppelganger. It's a state-run project to create videos that look like Western media online videos. So they take Euronews videos, for example, they feed them into their AI systems, and they produce videos that look like Euronews videos, with Euronews journalists saying stuff that they never said, and they post them online. Of course, they cannot post them on our official channels, so that's one way you can still distinguish, but they're very convincing. So, and we are just at the first stage of that. Are things changing? The answer is, imagine you are in the middle of a bomb explosion, and are things changing around you? They are, and you still don't see the end of it. It's becoming increasingly important in the foreseeable future to find a way to distinguish real videos from fake videos, because we cannot anymore rely on human, rational common sense to do that for us.
So how do you do this? Because it's quite complex.
It is, and so far this challenge has no reliable answer. Euronews has a series on fact-checking, on disproving fakes and so on, but we don't know if that works. There are studies that show that this kind of fact-checking content help spread misinformation more than they help fight it. So we need some kind of solution. I rely on scientists to come up with some way to watermark, I don't know, footage that was actually filmed on camera rather than produced digitally. That's one consideration. We need a way to certify the authenticity of media. And of course, for science communicators, it's very important that you work with reliable media that has a reputation, yes, like you have said earlier, that is responsible for what they say. Because indeed, if we go online, we will be very quickly flooded by misinformation that can be produced in quantities that are hundreds and thousands of times more than what us, journalists, can produce physically. We need time and money to go somewhere and study the story and tell the story. People who want to fabricate a realistically looking material can just enter one prompt and they get something shareable, and people will keep sharing it and like it if that responds to their psychological needs. That's the biggest challenge. Maybe just not to be all the doom and gloom, I'm sorry, but actually I know we were trying to remain positive. The flip side of this is that as far as we remain within the domain of credible media, helping you disseminate the stories, AI can help you very easily and at very low budget tailor-make formats for your target audience. The obvious example is multilingual content. Now it's easier than ever, cheaper than ever to produce videos that will be voiced over in various languages by AI, which sounds quite convincing. You can go beyond that. You can make TikTok videos or a video for a scientific conference based on the same material using AI in a very simple way. So you can tailor, you can adapt the format, the presentation, the language to the target audience, and that will make your communication more efficient. So AI can be our friend, and I hope in the remaining panels today we will learn more about that.
Thank you. Rehab, do you want to react? We have very little time left, so I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Honestly, there's no much to say besides what said by the panelists. And for me, what I find it maybe to add is that we journalists have a new competitors or a new competition with citizen journalists, which is good and bad, just like what Dennis said. So the citizen journalists managed to say things that sometimes journalists couldn't say it. They reach places and we saw it in places where war is taking place. Citizen journalists made a great effort to deliver the data. So this might be a good side, but on the other hand, fake information and fake data and disinformation spread more and more because, as you know, citizen journalists do not follow the ethics of journalism. So this is one struggle that we are facing now, and what I see is that the entertaining content is increasing because of this thing, the citizen journalist work and the content creator. Well, I hate this terminology, but we are having a lot of content creators at the moment, and the kind of content that they are making is hard to compete with. So this is another struggle that we are having, and it's hard for me as a science journalist to sell my work, which is a serious and a serious work in comparison to something that is like super entertaining and very empty of any value. So this is another struggle. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Manfred, any positive aspect that you think is coming up?
Very difficult
Trends.
to come up with positive aspect of it. Definitely fighting back is the thing to do. However, I would like to see that it is not fighting a type of fighting which would increase the gaps in societies which already exist, like, for example, regarding the climate kids and the generational problems they have been causing in many countries, or conflicts about the issue of migration, and equally so climate change, biodiversity, and so on and so on. But more the kind of fight where you try to keep to remain rational, while at the same time also trying to bridge such conflicts and bring the parties together with positive examples that you can really do something about a given problem instead of giving up.
Thank you. Yorgos, it's been busy and intense. I see a hand raised. Do you want to ask a question while Yorgos is getting ready?
Well, I would like to add to the discussion, and of course there's a lot of fear about future, and I like all what has been said about hope. I'm not so sure we have to fight fake news, that's definitely the case. But if we only fight fake news, we might end up in just fighting. And for the population, this will give the impression that we are losing the fight, because who is the right one now? So I would absolutely add this aspect of giving hope by giving good examples, by giving solutions, and also by looking at the past, not only about the future. We've been solving problems in the world. We've been solving big problems, but we simply forget about that. It's not in the media. I give you one example. In the North Sea, one of the biggest environmental problems ever in the North Sea was oil pollution. If we see the data, look at the quality status report of the North Sea of Ospa, you will see that many things have been solved in the North Sea. Pollution is much less than it used to be 50 years ago, but it's not in media. Why? I don't know. Probably short-term perspectives. There's no oil, of course, now, so there's no reason to talk about oil, but we have solved that problem. And if you can tell to a public that we managed to solve big problems, this gives hope. That's what you see if you give a public lecture to people. Give them hope. That's the worst problem we have today. People are losing hope, and then everything is finished. If there is no hope anymore, we will have no solutions.
Yeah, we're back to the love, not loss concept, definitely. I'm really sorry because we need to close. I just would like to give maybe the floor to you, Yorgos, to explain what you've been able to come up with, or are you still concentrated and...
This was very dense. So
Like the rest
what
of the
I
2
can
days.
tell you is like, this is the way, like, what I've seen today was this year, okay? Actually, it's, yes, there's so many things to say. I mean, it's so many, we are at the same problem that we were talking about, you know, like too much information. How can we take out of this information and just make a nice pill that everybody can take home and feel fantastic? Not easy, but actually, I think we have to really focus on somehow finding those metaphors that can help us, finding those examples that can help us. I don't know, like finding the connection to the audience, or stop focusing on shit, focus on the people who try to fix the shit, you know. Choose different angles, which is a very nice idea actually, to, instead of showing where it hurts, show another place and then understand that it maybe doesn't hurt there. So this is maybe a question of this. Every subject works, yes, as long as it's linked to the people. Human stories matter. I like this contrast of the story, the good story, the bad story. The same subject can bring one or the other. We need to find ways to debunk lies, to bring people together. And yeah, and I found this fantastic idea of how you can address people not on the way that we are used to, but the way they are used to, because we don't. I actually have a drawing I've done when I was thinking about what I was going to draw, which I didn't do. Like, this is the way we usually make this reporting about stuff, like showing people the huge problem and just leaving them with this helplessness of, please, anybody can give me a tool to get out of this? And this is not actually what we should not do. Actually, we should try to find the parts of the story that people can reflect with, the parts of the story that can give kind of hope, that can make you see yourself, like see yourself in the story. What is the part, like include the viewer, include the audience into the story, like to show where it's his personal story that matters to us. And actually about this love and loss, which Manfred was telling about, I think there is a big, that's my personal opinion. I think there is a big problem about trying to give, you know, like to relieve with false expectations. You know, like trying to believe that we can change pollution by using electric cars. If you see who is the main electric car producers, you know that it's not about helping the planet, it's about making money.
Of course.
And this system is a system that is destroying life. It's a system that destroys life. Even if we try to talk about it and make it better and ease the pain and put some aspirin on it, it will still destroy. So actually, where we need to find a way so that we can be, I don't know, like to be persuasive, is to tell the whole truth.
I think it's definitely time that we speak out. I don't know if you saw this video. I came across it a few days ago. Whatever we think about Al Gore, he did this speech at the World Economic Forum, and it was mind-blowing for me. He just nailed it, and he just says the truth. And I think this is what we all need to do. We need to reconnect to the reality. And I think it's also an expectation, probably, that is coming for you, that you help us really speak out about what we see is the real problem and the truth. And it's probably less complicated than we think and what we say. Anyway, thank you, Yorgos. I think you really captured it.
If I have some time, I'll just show you two things more about this. Like, if you see the stars, you don't see the constellation. We have to make the lines to find the constellation. There's no Sagittarius in the sky, but people imagine it. We have to create those connections. So, and we have to create those connections because I hope I'll find it in my 1,500, 500 layers. It is about this a little, like we have to find a way to connect science and people. I don't know how we do it. I don't know if we can imagine kind of a plug which can be there, if we need a ladder that can bring us close to each other, but we have to definitely find a way that we are not in separate planets, that we try to find this common space. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a big hug before leaving the room. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for bringing such great stories, such creative approaches, for trying to be different. And thank you, Yorgos, for all the poetry you've put around this. And thank you, everyone. I'm so sorry we can't keep going. Let's have a big hug before leaving the room. Bye.